Fans of a Horus Heresy, improving the look of your Forge World models, and discussing the Death of Hope. Thank you very much for joining me for a build, conversion and chat video. And the subject in terms of models of today's video is this cheeky chappy. And I'm sure you will all recognise this is the Space Marine Legion Sabre Strike Tank. This was released back at the start of December 2019. The 30th anniversary of the original article being published in White Dwarf, showing the conversion on the Rhino, and this is a lovely tribute tank to that early idea. And my particular one, this is one of two that I bought. Absolutely lovely model, brilliant tank. I think these are fantastic. And today, this guy's packing all his Volkites. So we've got the Volkite Saker and a top-mounted Volkite Culverin. It has a corresponding Volkite energy pack. Lovely. Now you will have, the observant amongst you will have noticed it's missing some missiles, the Sabre missiles from the side, and that's today's video. I've come up with a different idea as to how I'm going to mount my missiles, and I thought I'd share with you how I'm going to do it if you're looking for a slightly different look and feel to your vehicle. So that's what we're going to do modelling wise. In terms of the chat side of things, I'm going to be sharing and discussing my thoughts with you about the first episode, the first full episode of the Death of Hope series that's been released over this weekend, animated and crafted pretty much entirely by one guy, Mark Louis Spark. So I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on that fantastic piece of fan animation as well. So it's interesting, and it's certainly a more complicated piece of animation than you would imagine it to be on the surface. And I'm going to share some of my initial thoughts and reactions to Reign of Anarchy in this video, although it's not necessarily a comprehensive overview, but I hope you will find it interesting. Right, anyway, to business first. Let me discuss what I'm going to do. So we'll just shuffle that chappy out the way. Now, here we have the instructions for the Space Marine Legion Sabre. And there we go. And the focus of today's video are these here, the actual Sabre missiles. And there's two of these on each side, the opposite side of the tank. The right-hand side is a mirror of those. And what you do is you kind of, there you go. These have got these little notches on the side, you see here. And they fit into these little, well, lugs and notches, shall we say. And they fit onto the side of a tank. And in the end, it ends up looking something like that in terms of the missiles. Now, I think it looks okay. It looks more than okay with them on the side. However, I think putting missiles on the side of a tank is a bit of a weird one in my mind. Okay, yeah, I know. Before you start in the comments, I know lots of 40k vehicles have sponsons, but missiles and one-shot launchers, I don't know, they're just a bit more fragile, more easily fouled. That's my thinking. And plus, I've come up with an interesting way to mount these in a different way, which I thought I'd share. So it's not necessarily for everyone, but I think some people might be interested to see this. So that's what we're going to do. So we don't need the instructions anymore. And we can move on to the tank and the bit. So as I say, here's my Sabre tank. It's armed up at the moment. This is magnetised, fully magnetised. It's great kit for magnetisation. This one, absolutely wonderful. I'll be talking about the magnetisation process in full when I do my model build and tactics review on the Sabre at some point, hopefully not too far away. And I've got the full armour to show you, so that's going to be cool. But right, here we go, Sabre missiles. So we're going to start with these four. As you get them, these are what they look like. Now, I've already done a bit of work on these because the attachment lug was there, and I've cut the attachment lugs off all four of these missile launchers, as you can see. And if I am able to do a little bit of pass my dex test, there we go. Oh no, one upside down. There we go. You can see, yeah, all gone. Those lugs removed. And what they would have looked like prior to modification is the lug was here and it would have attached. Now, my other reason for not being particularly keen on this design is that now there's a lot of potential leverage there between the tank and the model, which I wasn't very keen on. Now, I had considered putting quite a thick pin into this and then into the side of the tank. Even so, I was still concerned that that could be an easy break, because when you play with this thing, when you game with this thing, you could easily pick it up like that, and all it takes is one distracted moment and crunch, you've broken your weapon. So that is another part of motivation to this conversion. So this is what they look like. So I've cut those lugs off, and what that has allowed me to do is rearrange the 4 Sabre missiles into a, let's say, like a multi-pack, a quad pack. Let's call it a quad pack. That sounds really good. A quad pack configuration. And we maybe stick these together. It's very simple, just stick them together with all the sights on the outside. There's a little bit of detail getting hidden. These bits, you can't see them. I did think about doing it the other way around, which would be, now I'm going to have to get all the correct ones. No, they're going, yeah, that's it. You could put them this way around, as opposed to that way round. I prefer this way, so I think it's a bit smoother, less bulky, and the amount of space on the top of the Sabre is quite limited, so I went with a more compact option. However, you know, some people might like to do it the other way around if you're going to do this conversion. So that's the first thing. So there we go. Stick them together and we've created a missile pack, a quad Sabre missile launcher. Now this is top mount. My thought is to top mount it. So the next question is where and how to top mount it. And when we look at the Sabre, it's quite a busy place. We've got the ammunition stroke energy storage point here. This needs to be accessible, because if, in the case of my model anyway, because I've magnetized it and I've got all 3 weapon configurations for it, I need to be able to get at that to remove it and add it on. So mounting it on this side of the vehicle isn't an option. The other thing with that side of the vehicle is you have the access ladder as well for the crew to get on top. So if there's a launcher here, then it's an awful lot of, it's even more stuff for the crew to get around. Okay, it's a model, I know, but suspension of disbelief and all that. It's head cannon as well. So I decided, no, it's not going on this side. You could actually sneak in here, I suppose, like that. It does fit surprisingly well between those two. Again, you know, it obstructs this side, and then you've also got the issue there of crew walking behind the weapon system. You know, and an accidental discharge would even do a Space Marine a lot of damage, because these things are probably recoilless. So, where else? Not over here, because you've got the exhausts. You've got a vent, again another vent here. So yeah, this is all very busy and stuff is going on, which kind of brings us over to this side, which I think is the only real place. And there's like a little oasis of not stuff here. And this is where I've decided to position the launcher. And broadly speaking, if we fetch a little bit of the tack of positioning, this is what I'm aiming to achieve, something along those lines. Now, obviously we're going to have to take into account that the commander's cupola lid, or hatch, sorry, should I say commander's hatch, cupola hatch, if it wants to come off, which it has done, needs to, you know, be able to open as well. So there's that to consider. So the main thing is, well, how to mount it. There's all sorts of ways you could mount it. You could just put a simple post on and that would be fine. I, however, decided to raid the bits box for some bits to do it. And originally I had these weapon power cable attachment points from the shoulders of the Leviathan Dreadnought. I had a few of these spare. And I took one and I cut it down to look like this. And then the idea was to put it there like that, which actually looks all right. However, I ultimately decided that this was better. Now what this is part of the heavy bolter mount from the Legion Arcator sponson weapon part of the kit. And this is a spare if you make the autocannons up. Likewise, if you make the autocannon, you've got the autocannon spare version of this. So what I've decided to do finally, and this is also, I think, stronger because I need to pin it, is to mount this here. Like that. So I'm going to cut those rivets off to get a smooth finish. I'm also going to take that rivet away, and then we're going to put a pin through it as well. And then the pin will be able to extend up, oops, got a bit of tack there, into the launcher. We'll drill a hole in. I'll shorten the peg down, I think. And then it's going to go something like that. This cable will just need a little bit of heat bending to tuck it in, as if that's like the power cables for launching the missiles. And if we just try bring all those ideas together in one place, courtesy of the tack of positioning once more, if we can get this right. Not quite like that. I need it mounted fairly far back as to not interfere with the commander's hatch. So that's what I'm thinking. Something along those lines. And I really like the look of that. And it puts me in mind of a number of modern IFVs, such as the Bradley, various BMPs, I think, some variants of the M113 with TOW missiles, or TOW missiles. I never remember which way to say that. Yeah, basically the missile stack mounted up top, and that's my thinking. So yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to cant it at a bit of an angle like that, and just for cool points. So that's what we're doing today, so that's the aim. Right, let's do a quick rundown of tools before we start working. So, starting with the sharp things, we have a sharp scalpel and a blunt scalpel for knife work. We have a bradawl spike for marking drill holes. Oh, look, we have a visitor. We have a piece of piano wire as well, which is stuck to it through magnetic connection. We're not using that particular bit of piano wire, but we are using this piece, and this is about, I think this is 0.8 millimeters thick. Let me check. Oh no, sorry, big pardon. This is 1 millimeter thick, and you'll then need a corresponding 1 millimeter diameter pin drill to do it as well. I've got a needle file, hemispherical upper, flat underside, and tapering to a point. And then finally, I think the last tool we'll be needing today is good old dusty brush. We do like dusty brush, don't we? In terms of glues and adhesives, we have some thick super glue. Just about any super glue will do this, whatever you're comfortable with. And a can of accelerant in case we need to set anything quickly. There's a plan. Right, let's begin with some preparation work on the tank and on the part. So I'm going to start by removing this rivet here that's going to be, I think, in the way, or... All right, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take these rivets off, because these are going to be in the way. But that other one might actually serve as a bit of a attachment point to help strengthen the joint. So yes, let's go. Right, The Death of Hope. Yes, so The Death of Hope was released on Saturday. What is The Death of Hope? Well, I'm sure you're all aware as fans of the Horus Heresy, but in case you're new to it, it's a Horus Heresy fan film that's been CGI. It's computer animated, and it's been animated, written, and, well, pretty much entirely created by Mark Louis Spark, who lives out in North America, I think in the States. And he's been working on this for a couple of years. The original trailer got 1.5 million views, and not surprising, it's hugely, massively epic. It captures the Horus Heresy in a way, in a visual way that, nothing else has, apart from like the official art, but in terms of animation, nothing's got remotely close to it. And then the other thing is, of course, the story and the feel of it. Everyone was blown away by that trailer. I think just about everyone was. Anyway, after a huge amount of work, and he made an estimate of as to how many hours work he'd spent on this, and it's I don't know how he's managed to do it. I really don't. It's like having a job and a job. He's done it in his own free time, and as far as I'm aware, he's not received any financial compensation. Right, on that first thought. So there we are. Well, not quite. Let's try again. There we go. That's going to go there like so. And I think that rivet actually sits inside of that circular opening. So we'll leave that for the moment. Good, okay. Let's now, I think the next thing to do is to drill the pin through this. So let's crack on with that. Firstly, I'm going to remove this stepped peg. So that's not required. So yes, that is the death of hope. I think it's been approximately 2 years in the making, this first episode. It's about 20 minutes long. And yes, so it was released. And it broadly is based around the events of the Shadow Crusade in Horus Heresy. So of course, the Word Bearers and the World Eaters' vengeful series of attacks on the 500 worlds of the Ultramarines, of course, of Ultramar, you know, the empire within the empire, sometimes referred to in certain context as the Imperium Secundus. So there we go. Now, what does this film try to do? It's very... I mean, the first thing I sort of realised is this is not a complete story. This first 20-minute episode. It is the first instalment of, I think he said he planned to, was it planned to do 3 episodes? I think it was. It may be 2, it might be 4. I can't remember off the top of my head. So yeah, please correct me on that. Don't hold me to that. But so it is the start of a story. It is not a complete work as it's presented. And this first episode is, how would I describe it? It is a piece of visual world crafting of immense complexity and richness. I think that's probably, just using, you know, simple words, the best way I can put it. Just parking that for a moment. So I've used a Bradle spike to mark a locator hole, and then we're starting with this drill and we're going in. And this final 1mm one seems okay. I don't think I need to do a guide hole, so we'll just go straight for the final hole. When you're drilling these, obviously you need to keep nice and true, so do a little bit. Rotate the part, look at it from another angle. Make sure you're keeping perpendicular and true, and just adjust as you go. So yeah, and it's set aboard a Word Bearer ship in the warp that has captured Ultramarines, all sorts of people on the way. I mean, there's Ultramarines, there are Ultramarine or members of the Legion who are not yet Ultramarines. There is a very unfortunate civilian, at least one very unfortunate civilian. And it would appear, if I've interpreted the visuals correctly, even an Eldar. And they're all imprisoned by the Word Bearers and the World Eaters, and a few Night Lords as well. Well, they're having fun with their sad victims, while the Mechanicum, well, just like to mess around with technologies they do. But you have to watch this to appreciate it. The detail of the animation is absolutely phenomenal. If you go on Twitter and look for his account, look through my account, you'll find he posted today an image of some sort of like renders of one of the models he used in the animation, and the detail is exquisite. And talking of exquisite, we are through. Very good, that was nice and easy. And if you've read any of the Horus Heresy novels, I think you will recognise the primary art style that he is paying homage to in Death of Hope. Watching Death of Hope, it's like watching an animated painting or one of these illustrations come to life. And those illustrations from Horus Heresy novels are very intricate when you look at them up close. Really impressive stuff. A little bit of back and forth there, just getting this whole centered a bit more. Yeah, so there is that, and he's executed that with remarkable clarity, I think is probably the best way of putting it. So now, let's see how we're looking for space on this hole. Now I need to think a little bit about the left-right location of this. So, firstly, let me locate the pin through. Right, so I need to tack this up again and just figure out exactly where I want it. I'm obviously thinking about this hatch. Looks like the light is failing a bit, but we shall press on. I might have to mess around with the light balance in post-production. So the first half of the video may end up looking a little overexposed, but hey ho. Okay, so is that... So if I put it there, is that too far in for the commander's hatch to be open? Yeah, there's a bit of... So if I'm probably going to go there actually, because it keeps it a little bit inside of the line of the tank, and I feel that looks better. Slight sacrifice in terms of interference with the commander's hatch. There's no chance it'll blow off. I mean, well, there's always a chance, isn't there? But hey ho, it's not perfect. So let me work out where this needs to be, and we'll drill another hole. Yes, Death of Hope. It is like a living painting to watch it. And it's quite remarkable, just all the visual information to take in. And I think that's an important thing to recognise about what he set out to achieve. He's trying to imagine the world of 40k in a way that I've never seen done before, not even close. And particularly if you've read the Heresy novels, you'll understand this. And there's things he's shown there that have never been visualised before in motion. Very, very impressive stuff. And that in itself is, I don't know, an absolute joy. An absolute joy to see. It really is. Now, another thing about his approach is it's clearly very important to him to capture the essence of some of the early source material. So with this we're talking, and when I say the early source material, what do I mean? Well, he's talking about Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader, the original chapter approved, and in particular the two A Realm of Chaos books, Slaves to Darkness and Lost and the Damned, which is interestingly back in production for a limited sale this year by Games Workshop. Yeah, so that is an important part of what he's trying to do. And as someone who grew up with those books, the clarity with which he's tapped into the look of that period is it's just amazing. It's absolutely wonderful. Right, I'm just marking the location of where we need to drill. So done that. I say we've done that. Oh yeah, there we go. Of course, it's next to the rivet, so we may end up losing that rivet after all. Right, I'm going to enlarge that marker hole. Have to say thanks to follower Magos Terra for identifying the manufacturer of this tool, which was I was trying to say if anyone knew where it was made, and it says D Germany. Well, you recognise the symbol. Magos Terra is from Germany, and the company is called Friedrich Dieck or Friedrich D. I don't know. It's what you have to say Dick in English, as in the shortened version. Yeah, as in Dick Turpin. Friedrich Dieck or Dick. But yeah, so yeah, that's brilliant. I now know where this came from. Fantastic. Bit of an aside there. All right, let's just do this diggity-doos. And now we shall do some drilling. We want a decent length pin on this. So it could get doinked, so it needs to be fairly strong. So yes, paying homage to the early 40k sources is a very strong theme in Death of Hope. And it's there in all sorts of ways. There's all sorts of little subtle nods, and then there's more overt ones as well. So there's some models that he's created as features in the film that are from the time. So there is a flesh hound in the scene where the ultramarine prisoner is being made to fight in a gladiatorial pit against a world eater, unarmored. It's a flesh hound. There is a statue of a bloodletter, and that bloodletter is certainly not a modern bloodletter, but it is one of the original designs. So yeah, and you can tell instantly from its serpentine body it is the case. There you go, already it's taking shape. One thing that's created a lot of excitement over on the Twitters, I think online in general, is his depiction, a fully animated, rendered and imagined Mark I Terminator Marine. So if you've watched my Retro Hammer episode, where I did Space Marine Terminators, it is that. The Mark I Exo Armoured Marine, sculpted by Jez Goodwin in 1988, or released in 1988. Sometimes referred to as, or speculated to be the fabled Saturnine Terminator armour. We don't know that. That's a speculation from vaguely written sources, deliberately so. Right, anyway, back to this. So I've now penetrated through the hull, and that's kind of like in position. So now I'm going to cut this off, and then we're going to drill an attachment point into this, and then just work on the final positioning. So, oh, I did forget a tool actually. So I'm going to introduce us to the final tool that we need here, which is a pair of hardened wire cutters for dealing with the pin. Now, actually, just thought of a potential hazard or pitfall at this point. If I cut the pin off, and given that this has gone through, I could lose a pin inside of the vehicle. So I'm going to have to cut this long, really quite long, way longer than I need it, but it doesn't matter because the wire, it will all get used to eventually. But at the moment, what it means is I can't drop it through and then be left with a permanently rattly sabre, which would upset me. That would upset me quite a bit, actually. Right, so far we have a mount and a pin. I'm not sure if we might need to shove that over a little bit to the side. Let's see if it's a bit... probably all right. Now what I need to do is I need to just think about where I want it to be. So probably about there. So I can't go too far back because I want that angle and I don't want the pin. Actually, no, what we can do is we can, yeah, all right. We can bend the pin. That'll do the trick. It's Death of Hope. So yes, the Mark 1 Terminator Marine strides past a group of characters, and that is absolutely amazing. You know, his artwork on it is brilliant, and yeah, come on, Forge World, let's have new versions of those. That'd be brilliant. One thing, I was thinking about the style of Death of Hope, and it put me in mind of two movies that I really like, quite artistic movies in terms of what it's doing, and these are both films that tried to capture the imagery of the period through the art and recreate it on screen. So the first of these is one of Stanley Kubrick's films, and it is Barry Lyndon. That's where I'm putting the mounting pin there. So if you've not seen it, I would highly recommend Barry Lyndon. It's a really good film. Yeah, really interesting movie. I mean, I'm a big fan of Kubrick, so I just like it because Kubrick's films just something else in their entirety. But the thing about Barry Lyndon that popped into my mind with Death of Hope was how when Kubrick, one of the things he set out to do was he wanted it to look like a painting of the period. And in particular, he wanted to be very authentic in terms of how he represented the lighting. So a lot of the shots were filmed with minimal artificial lighting and using as much candlelight as possible, and you know, various clever cinematography and various clever bits of cinematography were employed, and clever cameras were used to be able to film at a sufficiently high speed to compensate for the low levels of light. So yeah, but it's a very different, obviously the subject matter is completely unrelated, but the idea of taking art and turning it into a movie definitely put me in mind of Barry Lyndon with The Death of Hope. And the same thing for Ridley Scott's film, The Duelists. And again, that's another film where the producer wanted his film to look like the period. That resonated in my mind as well. If you've seen art of the Napoleonic era, and then you watch The Duelists, you'll understand this, or I'm sure you will make the connection. You know, those two comparisons with Death of Hope are quite strong in my mind, and I think it's an important part of understanding where Mr. Spark has come from creatively. I don't know if he was thinking of those movies when he made this, but the end result is certainly in that style. So, right, what I've got now, so we've got the hole drilled in the underside of the quad launcher. Now I'm going to use these, bonus tool number 2, these small pliers to put a bend in it to can the launcher. So I then don't need to do anything with the mounting point. So let's just do that now. So probably about there, I reckon. And a little bit of a bend on it, like so. Let's just see what happens when we put this back together. So that was one thing that I think one quite important artistic element to Death of Hope. It is visualizing the world through its art. Or, yes, it is visualizing a world in the style of its art. There you go, how about that? Now, I quite like this, but I've also noticed that that this is kind of like a little bit in the way. So that needs heating up and bending. So I wonder if we can go any further now with it as it is. I'm not sure that we can. Maybe. Let me try and mount this again, see if it fits. There we go. Now let's get it true. There might be a bit of barrel distortion, so you may not quite see this as my eyes do, but that kind of is looking fairly square now. A little bit of just manipulation there. Not much of an inclination yet. I'm going to have to revisit that and accentuate it a bit more. In terms of the lid, got a little bit of interference there. Not too bad. It's all right, actually. I'm happy with that. So what I need is a bit more of a bend on that. So let's see if we can just work that pin a bit more. I think it's a bit long now as well. So yeah, that's one really big and important theme, I think, to Death of Hope, or to my perception of it, and my personal experiences and history with the game. I think that's a really big thing, and it's something that hugely resonated in my mind. And the authenticity and attention to detail there was absolutely, brilliant. It's almost like those guys and girls at Games Workshop back in 1988 were able to make a computer-generated film back then, and they decided to do one, A Slaves to Darkness and Lost and the Damned. Well, it would have looked like Death of Hope. So yeah, I think that's awesome. Right, so I'm going to cut this down a little bit, so it's definitely slightly long. Oops. All fingers and thumbs. Oops. I have to excuse me, I might just... Okay. Now at this stage, I definitely need to bend this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go boil up some water, manipulate this into position, and then we'll come back and resume. So don't go anywhere. Rightio. Okay. So what I've done is I've extended the angle that this cable is at. And I don't know if that's the final position, and it's probably something I'll finish off camera as to not bore you all, but what we've got now is we've got the curved pin, or the pin with the nick with the bend in the end. And now the launcher assembly is starting to look something close to what I want. So say there, about like so. That's pretty darn good actually, I'm happy with that. So if we now just slide that on there. Okay, so the pin is too long again. Do I stick it at this point? I don't want to stick it too soon. I think now I've got the bend in it though, I can afford to cut the pin shorter without risk of losing it inside the tank. So let's do that. So yes, Death of Hope. Yeah, it is very grimdark, and it's very in the style of those earlier times artistically of where the 40k universe was. And given that it is a movie about the Horus Heresy, that is entirely authentic, because the one thing that's absolutely glaringly obvious to me as a rogue trader era person coming into the hobby and that period of intense creativity is a Horus Heresy is an entire recreation and growth of like the themes and spirit and mood of that early 40k universe. And in that respect, Death of Hope absolutely nails it. I mean, I put a comment on the video and I called it a grim dark masterpiece, and I stand by that. I really do think it is. That's good. Yep, I like that. I mean, the other now another thing that that Mr. Spark has captured brilliantly with Death of Hope is the inhumanity of the humans of 40k, and specifically the Space Marines, the Adeptus Astartes, which are absolutely massive, hulking, brutish, cybernetically altered monsters, which, let's be honest, that's pretty much what they are. And then also with equal vivid clarity, so the Mechanicum. And there's some beautiful work done depicting Mechanicum characters. Absolutely amazing stuff. Yeah, it's like they are the models brought to life. Right, I'm going to stick this pin in now into the launch assembly, and then we're going to work to completion from there. The Mechanicum just looked brilliant, as do the Astartes. The one thing I really liked with how he depicted the Astartes, and the Mechanicum, he gave them a lot of motion and mobility. So they don't just look like big lumps. They kind of move as effortlessly as humans do, and it just, coupled with their size and immense apparent power, it just like makes you think, gosh, these are something else. You would absolutely not want to mess with one of those. I'm now going to chamfer off this edge just to put an angle on it to aid with fitting. Yeah, and that was superbly done, superbly realised. The other element that I'd like to touch on in terms of capturing the feel of the universe is a depiction of a warp and demons. And this was done, absolutely brilliantly. The warp, I don't know how to describe it. Just go watch the film, look out those windows when they're walking along. Just take it in. It's completely outlandish. The demons flickering in and out, that was brilliant. I mean, stylistically, I think they're drawing a little bit on the ghost echo of the engineers from the film Prometheus, but that worked really well there. Really like that. It kind of made the whole thing feel partly unreal, and that's exactly how it should be with Chaos and the Warp. It is blurring the boundaries between real, between the real and immaterial worlds. And yeah, Death of Hope does that in a way that I've never seen live media do before. I've seen it in the art, but not in the media. And if you look at those richest, darkest, most grimdark pieces of art from 40k history, the spirit is there perfectly. And talking about perfectly, this quad Sabre missile launcher is just how I want it now. That's great. That's exactly what I was aiming for. Really pleased. I think I need a little bit of just a little bit to get it right, but yeah, lovely. And I suppose then the two things that I'm liking here are its centerline alignment, and then the angling I've got on it. And that was just what I wanted, and that was just what I was after. Let's just add the Volkite coloring on to get a little bit of appreciation for what it looks like. I think I might need to heat bend that so it's not quite straight. Or maybe this is one from the other tank, I don't know, but yeah. Now, everyone's got their own taste, but for me, I really like this top-mounted configuration for the Sabre missiles. I think it looks great. There is a downside to it. Two downsides to this in game. Firstly, it is a bit, you could knock it off, but, it's kind of like, for me, I'd rather have it here than here where it can get broken by a crushing grip. The other obvious thing is it makes your vehicle taller, and it's a bigger target under 7th edition rules. So do remember that and don't blame me. if you do this and then someone takes your tank out because I can see the missile launcher. All's fair in love and heresy. So to return to the Death of Hope, yes, the demon side of things was absolutely brilliant, ranging from the flickering in and out images, the statue of the ancient bloodletter or the early protoform bloodletter. I mean, who knows what that bloodletter could be called? Maybe something like, I don't know, Blood Slayer, or maybe even something obscure like, say, Fondlechew. But it's a fascinating part of the film. And then there's two live demons, so to speak. There's a Fleshhound, which is an absolute nightmare on four legs. And the way it has been rendered and animated in this film, from its sort of massive, muscular, bulky body down to its completely crazy frill, is wonderful. There's also a Gal Vorbak, or Vakrajal, depicted, very much in the style of one of the Gal Vorbak miniatures, and that looks absolutely brilliant as well. Love that. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And that's, I suppose, the other final thing I'd like to touch on is a horror element of this. Death of Hope is not, it is hard, for me it's very disturbing horror, depending how much you care to put your mind into it. And in particular, I mean, there's the whole demon things and, you know, various victims in various states of dismemberment and other unpleasantness is there, and it's presented in a very uncompromising way. It's not gratuitous though, and it is entirely authentic to both that early universe we've talked about and to the Horus Heresy novels. It is science fiction horror, and they are uncompromising. You know, it is not for kids, or certainly not for, you know, children who are... No, it is not for kids. So the horror element is very strong as well. But I suppose that's the truth of the 30k and the 40k universe, in the grim darkness of the far future. There is one scene that I found really disturbing to watch first time through, which is with the mother and child, shall we say. And that just really got to me because I got kids, and it's one of those things that, you know, I think as a father, if you've got children and you've had children to look after, there's just something about a scene like that that is deeply distressing on a certain level. So yeah, that did freak me out. That watching it through a second time, less so, but the first time through, yeah, that was quite unnerving. And, you know, I'm not, that's not a criticism of Mr. Spark. If anything, that's a compliment. And as I say, it is authentic and it is in universe. There's nothing about that scene that couldn't happen in that universe. Right, so I'm going to glue this into position now, and I've completely overglued it, which is going to be intriguing. I have to work very quickly now. Otherwise, I'm well and truly scuppered. I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, but I really do apologise if the lighting on the second half of this video is difficult to follow. Just because of timing, I'm having to shoot this in the sort of second half of the day today, and it's raining and overcast at the moment, so yeah, it's making it a bit harder, and I'm trying to film it in natural light. So yeah, my apologies for that if it's hard to view, but we'll see. There we go. And I think that's pretty much where I wanted to get to with this video. That was great. Perfect. Got a really nice strong attachment point there. I've got the quad launcher at the inclined angle, and we've got, you know, given the limited amount of space available on the top of the Sabre tank, I think probably not a bad place for it to be positioned either. So yeah, very happy with that. I'm going to do this conversion on both of my Sabre tanks, and you'll see that when I come to do the final review. I'm not going to stick this in place yet, so I'm going to do the hot water work on this. So I think I got a couple of ideas about how I want that to look. So I might just try tuck it in So the end of the cable is around here. So I'm going to come back to that and do that off camera. And that was where I drilled it in. It was just slightly off center on that rivet. There you go, you can see it if you're interested in doing this yourself. Clearly, I mean, as I say, I've used this heavy bolter link part from the sponsons on the Arcrator, but there's any number of ways you could do this, and you don't have to have a proper piece. Like I said, you could just use a piece of resin offcut sprue to do it. And there's many other ways, so yeah. But I hope this gives you a bit of some inspiration and ideas if you are interested in modifying the location of these missiles. There's a building bit of this video done. Let me just wrap up my thoughts on Death of Hope. So on the horror elements, very strong. They're very strong. It's graphic but not gratuitous, I think I would say. That'll be how I put it. So I hope you appreciate my slightly rambling thoughts and commentary on the first episode of Death of Hope. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I'm so grateful to Mark Louis Spark for doing this. The amount of work he has put into this is absolutely staggering, and we should just count ourselves so lucky to be in a hobby where there are people who undertake what is just simply a selfless act to provide us with entertainment like this. I think it's absolutely incredible. Yeah, I've said it already, Mark, but thank you so much for shouting me out in the dedication. That was quite a moment for me indeed. They're my glowing thoughts about Death of Hope, a nice tank conversion that I hope you enjoyed me watching do. As always, I'm very interested to hear your thoughts and observations on all the things I've demonstrated and discussed throughout the course of this video. Thoughts on this model, conversions, ideas, I'm very interested to hear those. And of course, please do share your thoughts and observations about Death of Hope. And in particular, I'm interested to